Very happy to be here today. Very impressed with Sam's talk. Good job. I'll do my best to follow up. I don't think it's as good a talk as his, but do wish me luck. So, today I want us to focus for 25 minutes or so on the topic of what happens when a company, usually a game studio, goes from having no UX people to having their first. And the subtext is, how do I justify my existence? So it's less about techniques, it's less about specific file formats or documents, and it's all about how do things play out after a new team joins, messes the already established ecosystem of a game studio, and how can the new employees and the old ones can influence each other, sometimes for the best, and sometimes not so much. The perspective that I bring to this is that I've done this 4 times now. It's not easy, but I did do it 4 times, so there's some joy to be found in it. I've worked at a bunch of studios across Europe. 4 times I was part of this first wave. Either I was employee number 1 in those UX teams, or I was part of a group, a wave of employees that washed over the studio. 1 time it was as a UX designer, 3 times as a UX researcher. And the last thing I did was to spend 4 years mostly on GTA 6, but a tiny bit also on GTA Online. Another thing to know is that it's very shaped by my own kind of lived-in experience, so it's very much a PC console perspective. And I ended up focusing on open world games and strategy games. So the things I worked on were very sandboxy, open-ended, and systemic. The thing I'm bringing to this is not just the hours of work, the traditional formal interactions with all of those other teams, it's also about me liking to hang out. And I'm the kind of person that you will see me, having lunches with other teams, go to drinks, sometimes go on vacation with coworkers. And I found that in those sometimes tense, kind of newly formed relationship, doing that was really helpful to understand the other side, because some people would be a bit too polite because they were seeing this new team as some kind of, burgeoning, fragile thing, and they would very much hold back their feedback and their thoughts. And sometimes moving outside of the office was sometimes useful to understand how do the old kids actually feel about what it was like to have this new team. So now just for very basic stuff so that we all use a shared language. Everybody involved, all the characters in this story are part of our good old user-centered process. What I mean is that it usually starts with there's something we just made or updated. Together we're going to discuss how to see if the changes are good. Then it goes to some kind of tasting phases. Some studios will prefer doing that with actual players. Others start with playing among ourselves. Usually it's a mix. Then together we discuss what happened. We do triaging based on the findings of said test. And then at some point someone is left having to implement some changes into the build, and then the cycle repeats. So our characters in this story, they are those new UX designers or researchers usually. They can be also things like UX writers, but to simplify, I'll just refer to all of those folks as the new kids. The old kids, for me, for the 12 years that I spent in the industry, they were designers, artists, programmers, and it also sometimes involved, the people running the company. Really quick, so that we all agree on what I'm talking about. For me, what looks good is what's on the slide right now. And when I did sit with folks going through the same journey at other companies, I could sense the pattern. I could tell that it was going well for them if what I heard from their experiences sounded like, okay, I arrived, I had a bunch of ideas, 2/3 of them got killed, but 1/3 got given a fair chance. The opposite is also true. Nowadays, when I sit with some kind of UX practitioner, if I hear things like, oftentimes what they tell me, the old kids, is your ideas are great. However, we can't spare a programmer right now, so we will not be able to implement your thing yet. Can you please hold on, and I guarantee you that it's going to be implemented in the next milestone. And often it doesn't. One thing that made me want to give this talk is that I find that our industry is not super self-reflective. So the studios who've gone through that journey and did it great, we don't hear from them. They're all too busy shipping games. So it made me wish that someone had given a talk before me, because that would have saved me so many mistakes that I made and that we're going to look at. The flip side is, what does it happen when the new kids are kind of frustrated? And usually you hear things like this. You hear like, oh, we've skipped research again. We jump straight to implementation. Or, this is crazy. I only got this many days to do a design. This is impossible. And the common thing is that last sentence, and it's, they don't get it, and they won't listen. However, as someone who hangs out, and who got to talk with the others, the crazy thing about this slide is that both sides say it. Old kids about the new kids, and new kids about the old ones. So now we go into the story, and we'll break down what happens here, how do the different groups influence each other, and how can we ensure that if one day your career takes you into starting up a new team inside a studio, you skip past all of the bad stuff that I tried and lived through, and instead go straight to the good behaviors that lead to like very enjoyable work days. So it starts with you. You're the new kid. I've been doing this for 12 years, and I think I can bet who you are in some ways. I know that you're super duper psyched about it. You told your mom. She knows the first day at which you were going to join this gaming company. Statistically, it's your first time in games though. Not always, but very often I've seen studios pluck seniors from outside of games in order to start up their new department. Another thing is that your origin story probably involves having seen some kind of person having a bad time with a device, and you made it your life mission to try to, help a little bit and make it so that this kind of stuff happens less often. And then this one is important, but it's not really about you, it's more about the system you are in. At this stage, you're not yet judged in ways that are very specific. There's a vague sense that will help. We're not trying to put specific KPIs just yet. It's too early. I really like Fallout. So the way that the shortcut in my brain that I use to think about the situation is that, oh, I was a vault dweller. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that it brings a very kind of specific type of energy, as we can see on the bullet points on the screen. And that energy will be met with a different type, which is everybody else. And everybody else has been around longer than you at the company. And what it means is that they got to see how tough it is to make any game. I would argue that any game that ships is a miracle. And so they've just lived that firsthand. So they were told harshly by life about trade-offs, killing their darlings, that kind of stuff. Unlike you, they probably shipped, which is the ultimate test, and it probably shaped them in a way that you're not yet shaped. And the big thing that I found, again, it took me 12 years to get there, but now I'm sharing this, is that I found that inside game teams, there are more people that are systemic thinkers than the average population. Systemic thinkers in my world, what I'm talking about, they are people who, they don't only think about their task, but they also think about how it can have knock-on downstream effect on other teams and other tasks. And there's a bunch of those folks. I found that the design departments, programming departments, but also art and production, are likely to have more of these folks. And unlike you, they know exactly what a good week or a good milestone or a good sprint looks like, because they've been around. So two types of energies that are going to have to deal with each other. There's a third group of characters. It's unlikely that you'll spend much time with them, though. They're the people running the show, and their perspective is much more zoomed out. They might not open your Figma file and check out if you're using the good font. They might not read every single word of your report. Instead, where their mindset is at, is that they knew what the burn rate and the head count was before you, the new kids, and they are going to just take a very long approach, and they're going to see if those numbers are still okay in the perspective 2 years from now. And because gaming is super tough, if you run into them in the hallway, they look stressed out. Do not take it personally. It's not about you. So now we have our characters. How does it happen? How does the team try to justify its existence? It's by doing that thing we were talking about. It's very simple, the way it starts. You try to be a kind of like process virus. You think that user-centered design and iterative design is great, and you're trying to just infect people with that way of thinking. Meanwhile, everybody else, because they've been around, they've been shaped by shipping games, they're taking a long approach again. And they're going to give you not weeks, but months or years before they try to judge if it was a good idea or not to add this department. And based on what I've seen for 12 years, the first year usually is pretty simple because there's enough buy-in, people are giving you a chance. If you fall by making mistakes, it's fine. Nothing that thinks it's a biggie, we've all been through this. And usually if things are supportive enough. That would not make for great like talk material, so I'm quickly moving from the good times to problematic situations. So statistically, it happens during year 2, and it looks like this. And it's the very first time that the new kids, with their optimism and energy, get told in a way that is very different and much more like important that we cannot implement your stuff right now. Later maybe, but now absolutely not. And this is where the rift happens, and it starts in the new kids' heads. And then to put it in more specific terms, where do they get blocked? In our little iterative cycle, usually it's in 2 steps. Either it's at right before the testing, because we can't make enough high-quality builds for other business needs and your needs, new kids. Or it's at the step to the right, which is like, oh, love your designs. They're great. Unfortunately, we can't spare a programmer, so we cannot implement this in the current milestone, but pinky swear we'll do it in the next one. So what happens in the new kid's head, if you're like me, and I'm a kind of nervous, I worry all the time kind of guy, it starts to go into panic mode. And that's the key thing that I want you to take away, is like, just don't. And one way to be reassured is that being blocked, being told that thing I just said, happens to every profession on the game. A gameplay programmer is blocked by engine programming. An artist is waiting for their model to be rigged. It happens to everybody else, and it shouldn't be felt as a world-ending event. Unfortunately, I worry, so I did freak out. And this is how I behaved, and I hope that you, by learning to unpack all of that, you'll be able to avoid what I used to do. So step 1, panic. I am not spreading the good words of user-centered design anymore. What's my worth? Oh no, no matter what I produce, because we're blocked, the game doesn't change based on what I think we should change in the game. Oh no. And the next steps that we're going to look at could, if you're not careful, put you in this what is called a reinforcing feedback loop, where what you do gets received by others, changes how they behave a little bit worse, less thoughtfully, and then it gives you worse stuff, so you behave even worse, and then it continues like this. It can be avoided though. So this is the only time that it's going to be a bit of audience interaction. It's really simple. Put yourself in the new kids' shoes. It's the very first time that you're super duper blocked. No idea what you'll do for the next couple of weeks. And based on the 12 years I've spent in the industry, I've seen people go down 2 paths. I'm going to read them, then you'll have a chance to think about it, and then if you're more of an introvert, just think about it. If you're slightly more extroverted, I want you to raise one arm if you think that path 1 is better, and 2 arms if you think that path 2 is better. So path one, you get told that there's no programmer bandwidth. You go like, okay, that's cool. You know what? I'll look at every competitor in our space, all the other games who have shared features with us, and I'm going to write a comprehensive analysis of that, and then I'll put it in our internal wiki. Option one. Option two, okay, nobody can implement my stuff, cool. I guess I'll learn how to do a tiny change inside the game myself. Now we start. I'm going to stay silent for a while, and after that, I'll tell you which path I think is the best one. All right, all right, all right. I don't see a dominant camp yet. Oh, that is so interesting. We need to talk at lunch. I used to go down path one a lot. With age, I regret doing so. I'll explain. But to be fair to both sides, out of context, those are great tasks. Unfortunately, context. So what's happening, at least on the left, this is me. I was panicking, right? So my only mission, short term, was to go from there's nothing on my plate to I need to look busy. What is the shortest path to looking busy? And the problem is that what I've changed in my mind and in my value system, the others have not. So I'm starting to act weird. And it starts a reinforcing feedback loop, which sucks for me. And the typical thing I used to do was to say like, okay, I'm blocked. How about this, guys? We do something really big or really different. And while I was trying to do my best to feed this need of mine, what I was doing is kind of like a long side quest in the eyes of the old kids. So just a bunch of made-up examples that I've seen either myself do or others. You see designers going on those big, like, comprehensive thing, like, okay, you guys can't implement anything from me. I'll review every button prompt anywhere in all of the menus. Alternatively, if you're a researcher, your take on that, your version is, okay, my team cannot test what you are all working on now. Cool, I'll just test everything else. So let's do a long-scale playtest instead. And that's going to be great because it's strategic, sounds comprehensive, it sounds great. If you're more of like a game data person, you're probably saying segmentation at this stage, and you're trying to convince people to let you spend a lot of money, usually via outsourcing, on a big like market research piece. The problem with that is that if you remember the other slides, other people, they're really defined. They've been around. You're still like clay, and those very first decisions about like how do the new kids react when there's trouble, it's very much setting expectations. You're telling them, that's what I do. Go to us for this kind of stuff. And so sadly, I was saying in my quest for being busy as fast as possible, I was saying like, whenever there's a problem and I can't get my way right away, I'll disappear for weeks, not hours, not days, for weeks, on a big project. You won't see any kind of update in your regular news feeds, which in my world would be at the top of the list, like per force, just seeing what gets pushed to the build. Second is like email and Slack. That's what I mean with I live in a separate workflow. And so I disappear for weeks, then come back with a big thing that another team needs to in turn ingest. And the best way I think of thinking about this, I might struggle with the microphone and with, no, it's fine. Let's compare path one, path two. Path one, you're sending bigger things less often. And at some point, it goes red, and to me it reflects that, oh, I've sent so much work already that for the old kids, the best thing is for me not to talk to me anymore because they are already busy processing the stuff from me from the last milestone. And I made this diagram so that there are lines, they represent communication lines, and they disappear over time. So you also get into trouble by going big side quests because you're visible less often. In comparison, doing way less impressive stuff just prevents the others from being backlogged by you, and it makes it so that the line stays for longer. And so what you see at the typical office before hybrid work would be like the new kids running around, always being at someone's desks, being seen, and being considered. So we go back here. And the thing that I got from my ambition of like trying to help was to be not valuable. And then the thing that I wanted to include, which is this slide, is the thing that I've heard UX people complain the most whenever we're at like having drinks and venting is this one. And I think that too is a system that you can unpack and undo, or at least get rid of the root cause. The way that it starts is that during your first 2-3 years, you look fragile. New departments, they don't know how we've done things for 10 years. They're kind of fragile. Let's go easy on them. So every day, several times per day, there's going to be a meeting about something. And it usually starts about something small, and it's technical, usually. They will at first care about the new kids, but they'll kind of like steal a glance in your general direction. And if it was me, I was like this. I was like so visibly stressed out. I thought I was hiding it, but I was bad at it. And so from a good place in their hearts, they were like, let's not invite him. It's technical anyway. And so I would miss out on a meeting that always devolved into something that does impact player experience, which in turn, again, it's a loop, it's terrible, missed opportunity for me to say like, I can work on this. Cue, less demand for work, which in turn makes me panic more side quests. To make it even worse, now the people at the top, they're starting to notice. They won't tell you, because again, you look fragile, so you're not ready for like hard discussions. But there's also a sense that now some of the old teams work slower, and that's really, really worrisome. So I was pretty bummed out. But thankfully, it's a system. We looked at the little rectangles and the arrows, and it's actually super easy to undo. Even after years of things going wrong, you can turn it around, and I've done it. So instead of the expectation that I was trying to fail, which is like, I need to look busy, what I should have done instead is like, I listen more, because what the others were expecting from the new kids is kind of like to get in line. Not in a bad way, it's not about like not being creative or like suggesting new things. It's like, when you do, can you do it in like bite-sized chunk that we can ingest? And then, can you do it on tempo? A great idea that shows up mid-milestone is way less pleasant to entertain than a good idea that happens while we're defining what the milestone will be about. So it's much more easy to be invited and considered when you try to match this stuff. So, thing I should have understood, number one, is to go smaller because of all the downstream effect of going big. The other thing I should have understood better, and the thing that is key in this why path to is better, is that I had this strong idea that code was not for me. And touching the build was for a special class of people, like programmers, tech artists. And that I was too dumb to even like open the hood and take a look under that. But when you say something like what's on screen there, it really, really helps you look like someone they want to work with, because it shows the fancy words for that is material curiosity, which is a way to show interest for how the things is made. Caring about wood, if you're selling, furniture, that's what we're talking about. And any kind of attempt at showing that will be received with a lot of like warmth, and you'll get invited to meetings more. Second thing that is oftentimes valued is if someone gets blocked, they can find creative way to achieve something else, even if it's small, without being self-reliant on another team that has to kind of like carry the thing to the last step, which is usually putting it in the build. And then the third thing, going back to like this cycle of like, why wasn't I invited? If you do small stuff, you don't look stressed out, you don't look at full capacity, it's much easier to drag you into like a random meeting that, wasn't thought of 5 minutes ago, but now we're doing it. So we go back to, if I can tab out, well, maybe not. Here, it's the thing we had earlier, and the distance between the two groups had grown, but the good thing is that as soon as you start to display the right behaviors, you'll be met with a lot more engagement, and the thing fixes itself. And usually the loop never ends, and then it goes awkward because you're really close, but it's really, really great when this plays out. Really quick, I want to talk about people who feel like, this is insane, I will never ever edit like a text string inside the build because I failed every math test. Been there, I had to retook an entire year of school because I was so bad at math. But the thing I wish I'd known earlier is that even in games of the scale of, mega AAA open world games, some of the files are indeed spooky. Don't go there, it looks so complicated, don't. But there's like a good solid third that is human readable and can be edited and interacted with by anyone who can find their way around Google Docs. And so usually what you can do is that you can say, like, okay, what everybody else is on the main branch, I can do stuff on my computer and start editing text and learn from that. So I have those 3 steps that I recommend to anyone who starts a new team, which is like find those files, mess with them, and then ask who makes this. And the trick here is that people love talking about what they do. So we exploit that, and we say, hey, can I show up to your desk and you explain to me why you do this? And here you will get like a bunch of benefits. You learn stuff. The barrier of like, oh God, I can't touch the build will go down progressively. And then there's an extra benefit, which is that oftentimes I found that new kids miss the big plan for a specific milestone because studios are complicated and someone forgets to like sign us up to the right mailing list. So we don't know that, say, tech art is focused solely on a thing during a specific milestone. And so we come up with plans that look like foolish because they don't take into account stuff like that. So while you hang out at their desks, they're very likely to explain like, hey, I'm X, that's why I make these files, and right now they're annoying to me because I'm trying to fix this or that, and suddenly you're back with the group. So this was a theory, really quick. I want to show what does it look like on people's screens. I think I have too many examples for the time we have. However, all of the slides are online, and I'm going to show a link to the slides in like 5 minutes. So one example was a game data analyst. Those are our telemetry people, and they got told, so glad you're here, bad news, we are not going to implement any telemetry for the next like 2 years because we're still finding the fun, and we're still going to edit the core loop so much that the idea of spending programmer time on you and your telemetry flags is too early, it's bad. And they panicked too, but later they figured out that with this approach I was describing, they could use the log files that programmers write for debugging purposes, and some of those log files, while kind of shakier than real telemetry, allowed them to already say like, hey folks, during your last playtest, people died many times, a mission was completed in like this many minutes, stuff like that. And boy, did they make that person popular. Because 2 years before they were expected to, they were providing value. The researcher version of that is that some folks figured out, here I just grabbed a Fortnite screenshot of the internet, it's not a Fortnite story, but it's about researchers finding that they could edit like some text strings, and they went from blocked, we can't make a build for you research, to, oh, we can make our little like kind of test environments ourselves, and we'll iterate with designers on how different wordings will change player behavior. This one is kind of extreme. It's less about files on your computer, but a designer was told, hey, we need to make the tutorial better. Also, we can't change the tutorial. Also, it is for a demo for Gamescom next week. Can you help? And after, again, sighing for a while, they were like, oh, okay, nothing UI-wise can change, but I can go in there because I've done this loop, I've gotten more kind of computing tech literate, and so they just moved a bunch of lights around, and that helped players in that demo find their way to where we wanted them to go. More examples, but I'm going to skip for time. Don't worry, the slides are available online. And if you do that, because it's a system, I really want to impress on you all that it can be fixed even like 5 years after the fact. As soon as you start to display the right behavior, you course correct yourself, the others will course correct accordingly, and you'll get more, kind of a more welcoming, warm working environment. So, but it has a cost, and it will change you a bit. Suddenly you're committing to the build. And suddenly, even though you thought you would not be like this, suddenly like, you two are upset when there's something wrong with build management. So you become a bit more like one of us. Really quick, depending on time, if I can spend 2 extra minutes. Okay, said yes, says yes. All of this so far was very much from like people at the very early stage of the journey. So very small steps to build confidence. Just so you know, the kind of stuff that worries me these days is something different. So I've copy-pasted a text from someone on the Discord that Sam gave a shout out to earlier. We'll fix it in UI. And it's someone who explained that their game director, and they're working on very complex, very expensive projects, they started to refuse mockups and wireframes and stuff. Their take comes from a understandable intention, which is like, if it's not in the build, it's contextless. I'm not willing to commit yet onto like, we should do this or not. I'm not willing to invest the programming time just yet. So I think that this is kind of like a frontier of things we all need to figure out as well. And so far, I went down a path. I'm not sure how other studios can benefit from them, but I want to explain in case people are interested. And so what I try to do these days is to have a system where you put your build in the background, and then you compose it with something like OBS, kind of make interactive mockup that your UX designers have made for you. You do that in the web, and what's elegant is that without needing to alt-tab, both the game build and your mockup receives the input. So what the game build kind of does is just its own thing, right? I just grabbed Destiny 2 just to illustrate. The game receives the input from the controller, while the UI layer from your interactive mockup also receives that. And so for the final user, for researchers that would be your players, for designers it would be like your creative director maybe, they can just see this. And it's imperfect, but it's a great way to let you and your team iterate without yet committing programming resources to build it in engine for real. So yeah, if you are interested about this, please come and talk to me, because that's my current obsession. So that was what I wanted us to talk about. And so whether you're a new kid or an old kid, please think about all of those ways that things can go astray and the ways we can fix it. And please try to influence either the new kids or the old kids, depending on where you are in the company. That's it for me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Jean-Luc. Awesome. All right, so we have a few questions, and I'm just going to take this one because people are asking if the presentation is recorded. Yes, it is recorded, and it will be posted on the Game UX Summit YouTube page, which is on my page. So all the previous Game UX Summit are also on my page on YouTube. And you say that it's also online, so can you share? All right. Okay. So yeah, jlpotte.com. All right, awesome. So I can move this on. Yeah, because we have a lot of UX designers and UI designers here. They're asking, what are you using for your slides? It's very clear.
As in, like, what did I use to make them? Okay, so it's a JavaScript library called reveal.js, and it's free and open source.
Awesome. How do you move away from being perceived as a service team and move towards being an equal developer on the game project?
Tough crowd. It's many things. I do think that the stuff that me and my friends at all of those kind of new kids kind of type deals, we underestimated is that not knowing, looking out of step with what is like the core function of a studio, which is to push changes to some kind of repo until we run out of money or we ship. The less correlated we are to that, the less it will work. So even if I do like the best user research report in the world, if it lives in OneDrive or Figma, that might require some kind of login, etc. Like the more translation steps there are between my work and the perforce activity log, the worse off I am. And in turn, if I manage to do like the smallest thing and push to the build, or in some kind of branch that is just like mine, right? It's not about like messing people, other people's work. The more likely that everybody from like principal engine programmer to like concept art are going to notice, because people who care are curious about what gets pushed to the build, and they'll notice and associate you with like, huh, right, the UX designer, they just push like localization stuff. If I think about localization, I should reach out. And also in things like perforce, your name is right there. So that's one way.
Thank you. Jean-Luc, what an absolute rock star, pun intended. What tools have you found most useful to facilitate cross-discipline collaboration?
A great question that has different answers depending on like whether you design research or game data. It sounds again like it's counterintuitive because you're going small, you're going not impressive, but it is very much those files that can be edited. It might not have been what you thought you were doing when you were like saying to your mom like, I'm joining a game studio, and suddenly you're just like editing a CSV. But it is much more likely to be noticed and to set into motion a bunch of things that will get you invited more. The stuff that people around me have been using, it's the typical tools. I don't think that a tool choice has made like has given a great competitive advantage to a company or another. It's Slack, it's the Google Office suite or the Microsoft Office suite, it's Figma, it's Framer, it's kind of like the usual stuff, even at the biggest companies.
Jean-Luc, do you ever run into shared or overlapping responsibilities with other disciplines like product/design? And if so, how do you reconcile that mismatch?
Oh boy. I think yes, absolutely. I got it less because, as you saw, my career was more on the research side, and that's much easier to say like, well, don't read my report. Like, I'm not overstepping. For design, what was tough is I'm going to like mix up a bunch of actual people I know into like some kind of fictional person, but he was someone who was like super duper megastar in another industry, and they were at a company that gives every designer what felt like 100 researchers and stuff, and they joined a studio, and they were really upset because they were not being treated as a star because they had no, they were not showing any interest in how the game works. They would be interested in like where the pixels go and like visual salience and positioning and layouting and stuff like that, but had no care in the world for the logic, the code that will make a piece of UI appear or disappear. So those are the things that can spell trouble when you come in and are visibly expecting to be treated like really like you were used to. Meanwhile, game developers being so obsessed with like all the problems we have in our industry, there's a mismatch that can create problems. And then the UX designers, if things go wrong, they can like go around everybody else and they go cry to like a chief product officer or something. And that's when the relationship really take a nosedive, because everybody else in the old kids camp have not given them authority to like impact or override like a mission director or like a game director, and they've done that, and that's where it gets tricky. But again, it's a system, and things can be unwanted.
All right, last one, if you can answer quickly. How do you find time to actually do the research/step back design while still pushing small stuff on the engine?
I mean, I think I'm talking about like really small stuff here. The tasks were not impressive. Even someone that is like the least talented person you've ever worked with, we're talking about tasks that those people could knock out in a week max. So sometimes it's very simple. It's like, again, we're talking about difficulty, right? So my redesign of the front end will get implemented. That's off the table. So instead what we're doing is very slight, text strings replacement, finally like going through everything that is localized or not for all the languages that we intend on supporting, stuff like that. So because those tasks are hours max, you do get to do that plus doing your regular core duty, hopefully.
Well, thank you so much, Jean-Luc. Please give him a round of applause.